So friends, Trump is flying to Davos with quite an adventure, but the main thing is that what he's doing against Russia is working flawlessly and to our advantage. So what happened? He took off in his own plane. The President of the United States, the most influential person in the world, took off in a plane to Europe, to Davos. They were waiting for him there, but the plane started having electrical problems, so he had to turn back. Well, now he'll just get on another one. He doesn't have just one plane. He's a wealthy man, almost like some of our deputies. He'll fly on another one. The funniest thing is that people were waiting for him there. They climbed an 800-meter mountain and arranged torches. There were, I think, 450 torches. They lit them up for the king so he could see, but he didn't arrive. So now they'll either have to set up new torches or do something else. Well, in general, it's really not a simple situation. A conversation awaits him in Davos because the conflict around Greenland has turned out to be quite serious. There are even protests. And statements, and even the Prime Minister of Greenland says, "We're preparing for war." Honestly, that's a ridiculous thing to say, because their armed forces are in no way comparable to those of the US. Nevertheless, the talks will not be easy, but I think Trump will gradually put pressure on them, trying to squeeze out something for himself. Here, of course, Russian figures will get involved with their own provocations. They seem to have already started because information is circulating in the media, citing an unnamed official, that most likely there will be concessions. Greenland, since the world order has gone to hell anyway. Well, fine, let it be. The negotiations ahead of him won't be easy. It's a pity we're in the background. But Trump's intention to deal with other bad guys hasn't gone anywhere. And as part of this concept, last night another Russian oil fleet tanker was successfully seized by the US Navy. And Russia, as you can imagine, is still silent, hasn't uttered a word so far. And probably won't say anything. At most, they'll trot out the sad horse again. Lavrov, like yesterday, who will say that international law is important, piracy is bad, but they can't do anything about it. In short, the sanctions are working. Ukrainian sanctions are working just as well, because last night there were some very impressive strikes on Oriol, on the thermal power plant, and on Belgorod. Also very bright, very spectacular, and the most impressive thing was when everything was flying after all. Our drones were flying over the Krasnodar region. They arrived, successfully bombed, hit the target, and on the way they tried to shoot them down, and a Russian Pavlov missile struck its own building. They filmed all of this from every angle and immediately tried to blame Ukraine, saying it was us who hit it. But there are plenty of videos from different angles where you can see the missile's trail, and the missile itself hitting the high-rise building. Friends, all these photos and videos of Belgorod's eagle and objects, photos of Russian sites, and most importantly, there are different angles of these missiles at the border of Krasnodar and Adygea. All of this is on my Telegram channel, Sazonov Official, or on Facebook, Kyryl Pravdorub. If you're interested, check it out. But let's get back to the point. Russian sites are coming under attack. The Americans continue to strangle the Shadow Fleet. And in this context, let's talk about the fact that there can be all sorts of discussions and arguments about Greenland, but Russia still ends up in the red. And that's the right trend. Of course, they will continue to shell Kyiv. And Klitschko says the situation is difficult. 600,000 have already left. I think everyone who had somewhere to go has already left. The rest will have to hold on. We're holding on. We're holding on. Russia's oil revenues are falling. They're being squeezed from all sides. And it seems that the attitude toward Russia, the attitude toward the aggressor, and the desire to exclude it from the game, this is something both Europe and the US agree on. Now yes, and it seems even China isn't very pleased, because there are rumors that China has unofficially presented a complaint to Russia. Did you guarantee security? You guaranteed protection to Maduro, to Venezuela, and you couldn't do anything. You embarrassed yourselves and you embarrassed our entire axis of evil, so you'll have to answer for that too. Overall, that's a good thing. We'll see what agreements they reach in Davos. As for us, the cooperation agreement on Ukraine's reconstruction has most likely not been signed and probably won't be. I'll tell you, it really doesn't matter, because it honestly infuriates me. All this talk about rebuilding Ukraine, about investments, about everything, while the war is still going on. All this talk about how we're going to divvy up the money for reconstruction. Frankly, that's a bit premature. If you don't mind me saying so, I won't say what exactly. The task is to squeeze Russia, to choke Russia with strikes on their infrastructure by seizing their tankers. And then, when we finally strangle that beast, the reconstruction will begin. the peaceful rebuilding that we all love so much will start. Friends, subscribe to my Telegram and Facebook. The links are in the video description. Subscribe to this channel as well. I'll do my best to keep you updated with good news. The weather is warming up, and that's a good thing. Everything will be Ukraine.